Welcome to Season 3 of the Climate Conscious Podcast. I'm your host, Deval Bazi, bringing awareness to climate change and sustainable development from a Caribbean perspective. Connecting you to sustainability solutions as we move from awareness to action. This is part 2 of the series Stories from La Soufrière, produced in partnership with Robbie and Francisca of the Sagassum podcast. This interview features Dr. Ashley C. John of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and was recorded on the 14th of April, 2021.
Hello, Dr. Ash.
Good evening. Let me say good evening to all. It's really good to be here. Actually, at this time, just took a break out to coordination to just share some of our story with the rest of the world. Really happy to be among my colleagues, the Island Innovation Ambassadors, and so. And actually, as I look outside, it's a very looking like an overcast evening, which is a good sign for us. Actually, having went through a week, very dry, very challenging with the volcanic ash polluting the entire atmosphere. This is like our break we are getting for the week. One of the better days we've had this entire week since the eruption of the volcano. Now, just for a little background, this was being yesterday actually. The volcano was in its 42nd anniversary. So the last one we had was 42 years ago, up to yesterday. And coincidentally, it erupted this time just a few days before. And yesterday in particular, it was really, you would have thrown that yesterday was kind of like a birthday celebration. One massive explosion, and it was, although as someone said, it looks beautiful to see, but it is very devastating to experience. And I would tell you that, and as you alluded to, sir, more of the times I'm known as one of the strong ones. I'm a community disaster manager, responder, first responder, and so on. So I've been involved in a number of different disaster responses and planning and so on. But this one, I must say that this one literally shook me. I remember on Saturday morning, it erupted the Friday evening, and when we were looking at it, where both the video and when the ash bloom started to spread towards the east, we could have seen parts of that where we are in the Grenadine island of Bequia. I actually did a video on it, and I was saying, this was, it looks like clouds just passing across the sky, and we recognized the difference instantly because the ash clouds were lower than the usual clouds. And you could have actually seen the difference in the sky, where you see two layers of clouds up under each other. And to me, it was very interesting. But what I woke to on Saturday morning was completely different. Actually, one of the first things I recognized on Saturday morning is the ash was toxic. So we had to immediately not just wear our masks, but we had to actually wet them up. So it was no longer wearing the dry masks that people were doing during COVID, but we had to actually be wetting these masks in order to breathe. All of the houses down, completely locked in, and no air coming in. You can't use your air condition, you can't use your fan. You just have to shut in that room we went about 22 hours like that. Open the door and take one breath, take the mask off, one breath back on and back inside again, because you couldn't allow the toxins to come in your home. And for me, that was the breaker. I couldn't believe that, we would usually have flooding, we would have earthquake, we would have even hurricanes and so on, snow even, tornadoes. But I've never been in my life in a disaster where you yourself cannot even breathe properly. It was, what we had to do actually was to create air. You walk around the house. So as we move around the house, it would create its own air. That is what was actually helping us. And we use a technique where we would fill buckets of water and we would place them in the center of the large areas of the house. And that would actually, that's a process we use to take some of the toxins out of the air. The other thing that was interesting for us was that here in Bequia we have 5 islands in St. Vincent and in the Grenadines that does not have a running water system that you would have in most countries, meaning tap water coming to you from the central system. So in the Grenadines, we rely on rainwater harvesting into tanks, the gutter rains, and then into the tank. So when the ash started to flow, we had to disconnect every single tank. And you're talking about nearly 10 to 15,000 people in 5 different locations, and every single tank had to be disconnected. And we had to ensure that ash does not go into our water tanks. So right away, we knew that we had created an extra serious water problem. And the dust was already out there. We had to tussle through that to get that fixed. And then you couldn't do any cleaning on that day at all. It was just too much. And then now you were also seeing the impact now on the mainland. And what was happening then was that we were trying to get out of the way at first, right? So the concern was we are hoping that we evacuated and all are safe. And you can see like all during the day, they use several methods to evacuate people, by land, by boat. At some points, the bigger vessels, the ferries and so on, could not even get into the land. So the fishermen, the fisher folk, use the smaller, what we call our water taxis and speedboats to go in and rescue people. You know, it was an amazing sight to see that at a time like that, you know, that they went all out to save these people from in that zone. And as in a disaster, there are some people that are extremely sentimental, you know, they don't want to separate from the properties and you know, I grew up here from all my life. I don't want to leave this behind. And there were a few people who you know, they were putting up a little resistance to leave. But I'm told that the eruptions was so violent that it actually scared them. And then they were crying out to be rescued, to be moved from there. You know, so it was that violent, because persons who experienced the one in 1979 felt like, okay, since I've gone through a volcano before, it would not be, and it would die. But this one, and it was not just one blowing of the doom, it continued. Up to this morning, we had another massive explosion again. The 2 former domes that were created, they are completely gone. Created its own new exit points. We started to have a lava flow. And funny, you know, they were saying to us early in the week that, no, usually the volcanoes in the Caribbean wouldn't usually have any lava flow and that kind of stuff. But all of these different things that they were saying in the last couple of turned upside down, you know. So it has been a very eye-opening, and yes, I would say even for a man, you know, it was scary, you know, very. And then you see pictures of what the people who were closest to it have been experienced, and it is very heart-wrenching, to be quite honest.
You've really given us an extensive picture of what the situation is like currently. But if we take a step back, what was the atmosphere like prior to the first eruption on Friday?
Right. So St. Vincent and the Grenadines was going through, first of all, we had a sudden dengue outbreak that was taking lives. Now, this is something that was never happening in St. Vincent so easy. So you had like 10 or more people died from the dengue fever, one behind the other. At the same time, the COVID pandemic decided it's going to sneak its way through all of that. And then, while we were trying to bring the COVID pandemic under control, the volcano started to show signs, you know, of extra activity. So they brought in the seismologists, right? And they brought in new equipment. And they were issuing these bulletins from the National Emergency Agency, saying that, yes, we are aware that these things have happened. So they put the country, they put the zones now on orange alert. They put the country on orange alert, which was basically one step closer to the actual eruption. And based on the information we had received from the professor, he did say that based on the data they have been getting, it would appear that it would erupt anywhere from the very day right up to probably a year or two after. But they could never give an accurate timing for it. So for people in the red zone and the yellow orange zone and so on, they were already uneasy because it was in communities they are close to the volcano, so they felt all of the different vibrations. So the other thing that was happening is that the Caribbean in itself was experiencing some very strange happenings in the oceans, where a number of sharks coming towards the Caribbean islands, and it was very worrying for the people. And research showed that sharks was attracted to this magnetic behavior of the volcanoes. So we had sharks coming in very close, even in St. Vincent. So you had a very nerve-wracking period before the actual volcano. Where you had on one hand, some people were scared already, they wanted to leave the area. So there was a lot of alarms being sent out by people. Then you had the response agency saying, no, we have not issued an evacuation order, so don't go anywhere, but just prepare just in case we have to. And that went right on until the very day of the eruption. So you would imagine that it was around midday, that order was given, right? And persons were already experiencing, like, they were having a series of earthquakes during the week, from the Monday right down to the Friday. And there were many, like 10, 15 in one day and that sort of stuff. So persons were already scared and nervous and having anxiety. And then suddenly an order was issued after actually a press conference that said, much is saying, we experiencing the extra tremors, but we are not yet ready to tell you to move. And suddenly, like within an hour or two after, they came back and said, okay, now it's time to move. So I think the whole island just went into a frenzy, to be quite honest. It was quite a frenzy. And as a result of that, persons obviously fled their homes without even being fully prepared, right? And then there was the bottleneck they had with the road network. The road itself being small roads, so you can have much traffic moving at one time. And in the area, is one of the most mountainous parts of the island, and very deep ravines, heading into the sea. So you could understand the type of atmosphere you have to be dealing with to do this evacuation. It wasn't phased, so it was just everybody move one time. So you have shut-in people who are ill, children, pregnant, livestock, all these things, just one chaotic bubble. And but the people were, the majority, as I'm told, the majority fled. And I must say that one of the things that was really great to know was that immediately there were four cruise lines who immediately headed for the island. They did not even hesitate. And that was really, really, really a good highlight for me. That gave me some hope that, it didn't take 2 days, 3 days. I understood that one ship actually turned around and came back to St. Vincent when the news started to spread around the world. And
let me ask you a question. You
Go ahead.
A while ago you were talking about the fishermen and everybody evacuating and all. There's a lot of particulate matter floating in the air and falling down. Is that? And I've seen the videos that you shared with us of you driving in your vehicle on these roads covered in ash. Is there anyone taking any extra steps to keep any of this particulate matter out of their vehicles? I mean, the air intake, of putting something over the air intake, the air filter to give it some extra help, or are you aware of anything like that?
I am not personally aware, but I can tell you from my knowledge, I just think that because we did not have any time in between to act, so I believe that most people probably would have not taken those kind of steps. Because even protecting the vehicles by covering down with a tarpaulin or something like that, that wasn't, didn't even have to. Because once that order was given, I think by 5, 6 o'clock, that volcano had already erupted. Within a matter of 4 to 6 hours, it had actually erupted. So it was not like we had 24 hours before the eruption took place. Our mind now, we have a situation where we have 17,000 people displaced, and we just want to get some basic items to them so that it wouldn't be too much on them. So we didn't even think about vehicles. Honestly speaking, we didn't think about vehicles. I think it was only Sunday evening when people, or Monday, when people actually started to even take dust off of vehicles and so on. Right?
Yeah.
For those from Friday to around Sunday, I don't think much people even, to be quite honest. And honestly, and even during the week, I can tell you, even we have not even looked at that.
I'd start spreading the word around to watch that air filter, because your air, get a hole in it, you get that stuff in the engine. Oh, there's going to be problems. It's going to ruin it, and then you won't be able to take things to people to help them and all. So, that's something you have to be hyper aware of in a situation like this, is your air filter and all. And it's something a lot of people don't think about, but please do.
I actually have just taken a note of that.
How many people are still on St. Vincent? Are there still people on St. Vincent, or has the entire island been evacuated?
No, we have people. I mean, I would say this to you. On the mainland, they only evacuated basically the red zone area and the orange zone. So they moved them from the red zone down to the green zone into the shelters in the green. I would say honestly, almost 90% of the population is still there, right? Even in the shelters, very few people, compared to the displaced numbers, only the numbers were very actually in the shelters itself. So what people did, they went to friends' houses, they went to friends and anybody who had an empty house that could be used. People just gathered together. I know that one family had offered to stay, and it ended up now at like 24 people in one house. So that was this, people were just finding some way to get away from the red zone and the orange zone. But off the island, not many people did that. I know about 100 people came down here to Beckwith. I think that was the last number I got this morning. But most of the people stayed out on the mainland. I can't tell you the numbers for the cruise ship. I don't have the official numbers yet, but they were now working through the logistics of people who want to leave and so on, right? So, but it doesn't appear to me as if the majority of people are going to go anywhere anyhow. It does not appear that way to me.
That's
I think it's becoming worrying now though, because of the fact that it has not stopped us yet, and it keeps having these they call them now violent explosions almost every day. It's starting to worry some people now. Some people are questioning themselves now, as in terms of, should I leave? Getting ready to leave now. And I say that in the context of Montserrat. That Montserrat had to do a very massive evacuation. But for some reason, I don't know if it is because of the demographics of the island that did not extend the damage to much more reach. In terms of I think persons were more looking at the damage will come from the lava flow, right? And as you rightfully said, Mr. Robbie, a lot of us, the damage from the actual volcanic ash and so on. I think that is something that was not taken fully into consideration, because I can tell you this, that as far as Grenada, Barbados, you see Barbados, what happened to Barbados? Grenada has there were people in Grenada who sent me pictures of actually being, they had allergic reactions, and they're all the way in Grenada. We have St. Lucia had some. I see an article saying that they're seeing this ash bloom heading towards Spain. So this thing has been massive. And I don't think that we really understood or understand the danger of the volcanic ash and the toxic fumes in the air during and after a volcano.
Yeah. The thing is, everybody's got their different reasons for leaving or not leaving. That just spans the spectrum. And so you're always going to find that, whether it's a hurricane or some other natural disaster and all. But I'm really interested in what people are going to eat. And, this ash is covering a lot of stuff. And, a lot of people that may be watching this today, they think of those islands as places where you go for a cruise ship, or some foolishness like that. But you grow your crops there. You eat, you raise your food there. What's the situation with the crops, or do we even know right now?
Well, yes, they have already started to show the devastation. Actually, I mean, the seismologist said that agriculture is going to be almost wiped out for a period of time, and you could actually see those in the videos that has already started to occur. St. Vincent relies a lot on what we call ground provisions here and tropical fruit and so on. And a lot of those trees, particularly like the breadfruit tree, and a lot of those on the mainland, the ash just destroyed them. I mean, in terms of not just falling on them, but the weight has actually been breaking them down, literally destroying them. The other factor is that the food that will be in the ground, you cannot go now and harvest that, right? That is the other challenge. The doctor mentioned that we will lose, for example, our banana crop. And you would know that in a country like St. Vincent, that's one of the main staples. So a lot of our main food that we will rely on is really being devastated, right? So what is happening now, there's a switch now to obviously non-perishable food. The livestock has just been left out there. We now have to get a count to see what has happened to them. From the pictures that you're seeing, honestly, you can see the stress on those that have survived. They're just there, like, even look depressed. They're not even mobile to be moving around or anything. They're just there. And it's very painful to watch. From every type of animal, from the cow to the dog it's very painful, to be honest, to watch. But at that time, you really couldn't take them anywhere to a Pacific shelter or anything at that point. It was basically a matter of if they can make it on their own as an act of Mother Nature. There is some that we see obviously still alive, but we are not sure yet as to what is the degree, what is happening to them. And my other concern is that just like us, these animals go through severe respiratory problems too, having been fully exposed to this toxic stuff and the ash, and because they had to be out there breathing that in. They're in a building for them to go in and hide from it or anything. So it would have been, I could imagine the devastation that they are feeling too, and they're showing it. They're actually showing it. You see the pictures, you can see the stress on them and so on. So it's something that I don't think that we were prepared for at all. I mean, yeah, you hear about volcanoes, you even saw Montserrat, but I think the average person that you would not imagine that something like that will come to me,
Dr. Ash, you mentioned that you all were facing not just the immediate effects of the eruption, but prior to that, you all were facing people being infected with dengue as well as the COVID-19. So we see the convergence of, multiple crises. We're seeing a lot of aid pouring in from your neighboring countries. But where do we start to rebuild? How do we rebuild?
Well, to rebuild, I think one of the first things you just have to do is, they're in disaster management, there are several stages. So when the incident occurs, you're looking at saving life first. So we've been doing that, has been happening. We know that for sure. Then you look at, for example, providing aid to those affected. That is going on. And now you're looking at, obviously, an assessment of the damage. That will then determine where you go forward. So what I'm seeing happening now is that for us, even as an organization, And for me, as one of the first things I wanted to make sure would happen in going forward was that we get that aid to the people. So one of the other things that I probably should have mentioned before also was that not only did we have the natural crisis that was happening, the Gulf was experiencing an economic downfall, right? So a lot of the persons here would not have the available resources that other countries might have. So right now, a lot of people depend on remittances that is coming to us now. So you understand why I'm talking about rebuilding. So what we're seeing so far is that a lot of homes and road infrastructure has been severely damaged. You're talking about 17,000 plus people this cannot go back to their homes even as we speak. And I was even thinking that even when the time comes that they perhaps could even go and visit the home, things like, for example, the beds, the pillows, the mattresses, we can't use those. We just have to recycle them and start all over again because they would have been exposed to so much toxins. You can't go and sleep on that kind of stuff. So the rebuilding is going to have to start with the basic needs first. And then we're going to have to look at it in terms of perhaps I'm seeing possible relocation in some cases. I would want to think though that if I had the opportunity to create policies in terms of rebuilding, one of the things I would want to do now is instead of just naming an area a red zone, having seen the devastation, I would want to declare some areas inhabitable, right? I think it is a bit too dangerous to be too close to that volcano, right? So then we would have to look at how do we relocate people, where is the safer places and so on. Basic housing, you're going to have to do some quick basic housing. And if I take an example, I noticed that in the United States of America, in the worst stages of the pandemic, what they did, and China did it as well, they were setting up these emergency hospitals and so on in different locations. So you're going to have to set up infrastructure like that because a number of the people that had to be evacuated would be facing now a lot of respiratory challenges, not just now, but going forward. You have to be having frequent medical assessments. And we don't have the facilities here to do that in terms of physical building. So there's going to be a need now for remote hospital care and so on. The other issue when we are food security, there's kind of an advantage and a disadvantage in that after a couple months or so, the very ash and so on that would have fallen, it goes to the soil and as good fertilizer. So the soil will become extremely fertile over probably a year or so. But in the immediate time, we can't always survive on the non-perishable stuff. We can't intake too much of that. So perhaps possibly it's looking like we're going to have to import the very ground provisions and so on that we would have before, we could have produced ourselves. We're going to have to rely on importation and so on. In the immediate, I would say within 6 months to a year, before we see any sign of normalcy. And I think I might be generous, perhaps, but yes, I think I'm going to be a bit generous, but so the other thing I would look at if it was me, like a lot of these people who reside in the red zone and green zone, what I would do is move them, even if temporarily, to a lot of the Grenadine Islands, so that proper studies can be done, and we could come up with a very good plan that can. So when we rebuild, it will be even way better than it ever was. And you can't do that. I don't think we could properly do that if the people are still within the very area that has been affected and so on. You need to really like what they did in Montserrat. The people left there for, I think, I can't remember the period of time, but I think it was maybe 6 months to a year or more. They actually were moved off the island so that they could have properly assessed it and determine what was best in terms of moving forward. So it's going to be a very big challenge. Our water system, our entire water system, not only in the Grenadines, but the mainland, has been compromised. The entire water system. We rely on river catchment. That is no more at this time. We can't use that right now. So we are resorting now to bottled purified water and so on. Even for the common baths and stuff, you can't safely use the water that would have been left back and so on. A lot of that water is going to actually be used for cleaning down, washing down homes, and so on, not using for your domestic use. So we're going to probably even have to import domestic water also, not just for drinking, but for your baths and so on, for cooking with and so on. So we're looking at a massive exercise going forward, very massive. Then the education system, our education system, a lot of schools, cannot function at this time. So that is another issue, that the schools would, education would be more effective because they were on break from the COVID. And so that is another issue that we're going to look at. They're doing virtual studies, but at the same time, a lot of the parents of these children are affected. Teachers are involved in the shelter management. The infrastructure is overloaded, the network. So there's a lot of complications that has been created by this one phenomenon.
Yeah, let me ask you another question, please. And this is fascinatingly depressing, if you will. What kind of infrastructure is still intact there? Is there electricity? Is there internet? Do people have access to phones on St. Vincent, or is just everything shut down?
We have they're still using telephone, they still have electricity. The running water is a no. A lot of the houses up, but they're just buried, covered in ash. So, or even though the buildings might stand, they're just there. But they are the ash I saw on some roofs were like 6 inches or more in thickness, right? Yeah, it's very, especially the closer you go to it, it's extremely thick. As you will see even on the roads, as the vehicles rolling, you saw that dust that was picking up that you couldn't even see the vehicle in front of you, which is very dangerous. You still have electricity, we still have the internet and so on, but the water is the greatest. I think that had the greatest impact so far from the information I've received, and then the fact that even though the buildings there, we can't use them for a while anyhow, and there's a lot of infrastructural damage in terms of I think that there's a community that is cut off. From what I've seen, the lava flow cut its own road again, cut the community in half, damaged some major feeder roads. So that's another compound issue that we have to deal with. The facilities, even for the shelters, are not even quite adequate for the numbers that we have. So, that compounds even the challenge that we are faced with, even outside of the actual eruption of the volcano itself.
It's like pushing over that first domino.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough one. Believe you me, it's rough. It is so tough. I mean, for me personally and my team here, we are very troubled because we are miles away from this red zone and orange zone and even the green zone. And the effects that we are feeling is so tough on us, not just physically, but mentally, You just imagine that you came out and you washed down your entire house at 9 a.m. And by 11 a.m. you gotta go over that again. And then by 1 again, by 3 again, and then when you get it in the morning, it's like you gotta start all over again. Because what they have advised us to do.
I can't, I've got a tremendous suite of experiences at my back, but I can't even imagine that. I can empathize with you because there's an issue. But when you talk about details like that, I can't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah. That is the thing that got me. As I said, yeah, I heard about volcanoes. I've heard it, but there's nothing like experiencing it. Even from the distance that we're, there's absolutely nothing like experiencing it. I don't think I would have. I don't ever want to have to experience nothing like this again.
Yeah, volcanoes are kind of like are like dinosaurs. We all heard about them. We just never thought we'd see one.
So true. So true. For me, it's like
Yeah.
I have, as I said, I have been a community disaster manager for over 20 years in many different islands I have assisted. And not once has I ever been scared until now. This is the first time I have ever in my entire life been frightened by a catastrophe. Literally shaked and cried and lost for words. Like, can't move, just paralyzed mentally. You don't know where to go, what to do. You just get frozen. So it's really, I mean, the media, some people say that the media just show graphic stuff, but I don't think that the true story has even been told as yet, right? In terms of what this little island has been experiencing.
You mentioned the physical damage that was done, but we haven't even gotten into the trauma of the population in St. Vincent. As I asked earlier, how do we rebuild? And it's not just rebuilding the physical infrastructure or your economy, but healing from this traumatic experience. We can only empathize, as Robbie said, but I don't think our imagination will do it justice.
I would say this honestly. I just feel a little. Just bear with me, but yeah, it is rough. Believe me. I'm a therapeutic counselor. Let me say that, and I don't know yet. I haven't figured out yet how we are going to even start to help our people mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What I know for sure is that what needs to happen now is a lot of reassurance, care, not just that we empathize with the whole world. I know people sorry for us to say, but what I saw that is needed in this is not just to say, oh, I'm sorry about what is happening there, but to do something. Now, people might figure, okay, but I am at a distance. No, don't matter how far you are, you can do something. For example, what I think works, because we know that we are faced with so much, and we know that, for example, my friend in Trinidad and Grenada, Barbados and Spain, and the island innovative ambassadors, and all of these people around the world are coming together to say, listen, here we are with you. This is what we're going to do for you, and it is actually happening, right? So when you're dealing with the affected people and they are aware that you are not in this alone. We have not abandoned you like how you had to abandon your particular area. The world is behind you. We are here giving you not just saying nice words, but we are doing something to help, right? That is the first thing that I think would help these people, because in their situation, they need that type of reassurance. Then you have to continue this process. Now is a good time. Just like I learned just now with Mr. Robbie, these little bits of education and public awareness. Tell us what to do from your experience, because we have never had this before. Most of the people that are alive now in St. Vincent heard about the volcano, never experienced it. Just a few would have experienced it. And what they said to us was that when it came, they themselves were young at the time. They were children. Even from me, that made me gather some more strength to know that, hey, now we can do something extra to help some other people, because these people have acted right away. And like using technology. You have a cash app, for example, because it's difficult to maneuver through, the kind of logistical. You had the airport, the airspace being shut down. The sea space didn't have visibility. So you can think of just sailing and stuff. But you had people saying, all right, here's some cash. Go to the local supermarket that has a stock, get some of this stuff, and then immediately, at least let them have a meal today. And then, we will continue that process until more help comes. That is it. And when they see these meals coming to the shelter and people are coming to them, housing them, putting them up, making them more comfortable, that has helped a lot so far. Only today, you made a very good point there, Ms. Darvell. I had a request. Two things happened. I had a group, the Caribbean Voice, that has offered psychosocial counseling, right? And then today we had a request from a shelter that there would be a need for it because the people in the shelters are basically breaking down. And we know that this would happen. So we have to do it by all means. Virtually, who can go in physically, it just has to happen. You know, so the Caribbean Voice we have some psychiatrists and so on. They are going to, what we're going to do, the teachers, the teachers and so on have tablets, devices. So they are going to now connect through a Zoom network like this so that the people in the actual shelter now can receive that counseling even over a Zoom call like this and so on. And I'm happy that we have reached a place like this in the world that we can even use the very technology to be effective even at from any location that you are. The fact that I'm here with you this evening, you know, the fact that you reach out to talk to us and to hear our story and to see what is going on, this is so much. Because when you're in this, you feel like you are in a cave, just closed in, like the disaster just have you wrapped into a cave. So when somebody peeks through that dust and you know, find a little light to peek into that, it is mentally reassuring. It is emotionally reassuring, and you know, well, we're gonna have for the religious persons, you're gonna have the prayer. We're gonna have the people who are singing. They're encouraging you to do a lot of things that would help ease that trauma, right? There's going to be a need for some structured programming in terms of health, because I would anticipate that, you know, there's going to be a lot of mental health issues coming out of this, particularly depression, anxiety. We might see more people becoming, for example, experiencing being bipolar, because of persons who would have heard the explosions and witnessed them and were so close to it. They will become very traumatized over a period of time. And, you know, so we're going to be dealing with a multiplicity of mental issues going forward. The other issue that we are very concerned about, as you would know, that happens in any disaster on any part of the world is gender-based violence. How do we protect our children? I don't want to just say women, but boys and men too. Because, you know, if you understand what happens during the trauma that is caused from these events, sometimes get you in a mood that the hormones start to work in some very crazy ways that you would not perhaps do if you were not, you know, in a normal circumstance. And desperation of being locked into a building rather than the comfort of your home. So a lot of things, you see the possibilities of a lot of things that could try and come out of this. So we have to do a lot of capacity building to help people to learn how to cope within a sheltered environment. The do's and don'ts. We have to have our security intact at all times, you know. A lot of property, obviously, you got looting, and then we got to prepare the people to perhaps go back to their property. You know, that is going to be a whole new episode of trauma again. And we have to prepare the people for that as well. So this is a long run, I would say. This is a marathon effort that's going to take. I don't think that this country would ever be the same again, ever.
Well, Dr. Ash, I appreciate it. I can tell that your heart's got to be in this because you can't be anything anywhere else and all. But you're thinking about this a lot, and these are a lot of good things that do need to be considered. And I just want you to know I appreciate you.
Now, interestingly, we are island innovative ambassadors, and we are looking specifically now at sustainable development. And you know, I cannot. Let me be very no. There's this how to put it. There's this notion that if you are going to now be looking at these issues, governance, leadership, from the national level and so on, that you are portrayed now as being negative, right? And that so you have to be battling. Like the questions that my colleague asked, they're valid. Me, like people like figure that no, you don't need to be thinking about these things now. You know, I don't agree with that personally. You know, I've been, as I said, being part of many disasters, and we do what is known as a evaluation. Well, that's a nice word, but they call it a post-mortem. of the events. You have the daily briefings and so on. And when you go into those briefings are not designed to get people to like you, right? Those briefings are designed to look at the actual. There's a lot of frustration brewing up now because people are obviously now starting to look at what we could have done better. What are they doing now in terms of the structures in place to help the people to alleviate the suffering? And how are we going to correct these things going forward, even from a leadership, governmental level? Leadership not only from the government, but the community level, as in us, we the civil society, we the people on the ground. And what I must say this, I can't leave the program unless I say this evening, that for me, it breaks my heart to see that even in the midst of such a devastating occurrence, natural disaster, you have to be in a fight, as a civil society practitioner, to want to give assistance from the ground. They are putting a lot of draconians in place to kind of want to block us in people. And we know that no government can do 100%. We all know that. What should be happening is collaboration and partnerships. But what's happening is the opposite. It's like, we alone should be doing these things, not you. And it is creating a lot of frustration, because in the midst of all of that, because the national mechanism can never meet the needs of everyone, it is creating a lot more suffering. So the people it's not like before where people were going to shelter and just keep quiet, and no, the people are venting the frustration, right? And we want to help them, and your system is like, oh, no, we're going to block you from doing that. Then a lot of us, I must say, a lot of my colleagues and I, we are very upset. I will use the word upset, because we were screaming before this event. We were pleading, put these things in place. And it went on deaf ears, right? And then this thing popped up on them like, bam. And they want us to say to the world, yeah, they're doing a very good job. All is well. I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
The thing is, a lot of these people running things and all that, oh, it's doing fine now. We don't worry about it. We'll fix it when it breaks. But it costs more. It's more expensive to wait till something breaks. Better put some oil on the hinge so the door quits squeaking. Better change the oil in your vehicle. Do maintenance. Prepare for the future. Fixing something today is cheaper than replacing everything tomorrow.
Yeah. So if we are supposed to be looking at sustainable development, we really have a challenge on our hands. And I don't know if it's just uniquely that this was designed, that even us, the island ambassadors, would have to experience it in our state this year to teach us some lessons. And I'm hoping that among our body, that we would go a bit further than just looking at the issue, but lobbying to put things in place, as you said, sir, to preventative management, in our look at sustainability, to eliminate some of the challenges that can happen down the road. We can't stop a natural disaster, we know that, but we can at least eliminate some of that suffering that the human being would have to face. And I have no regret. Believe me, I will do this again and again. I have been offered, as you said, Robbie, come to this island, come to that island. No, I can't leave my people. Sorry, I can't do it. No, not at this time, unless it was a case where it was really, no choice. But I have to stay with them right now.
I want to thank you for being with us today. It's been a really great, and we appreciate the opportunity to share your story.
Thank you for listening to the Climate Conscious Podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @The Climate Conscious.